Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Thursday, June 16th. The time is 6:05 p.m. We're here for a work session of the Coppell City Council and a budget workshop. There is a quorum present, just barely, so I will call the meeting to order. First order of business is to inform everybody that we do have ice cream available in the back of the room. We know that's why everybody is here, so please help yourself. That is marble slab ice cream, and you're welcome to help yourself. There was some debate whether it was seconds were allowed, and yes, they are, so have fun. Item number 2 on our agenda is a citizen's appearance. Persons wishing to speak must sign the register. We did not have anybody signed up to speak for our first citizen's appearance, so we're going to dispense with the reading of the legalese there. And item number 3 is our presentation and discussion regarding their service organization's request. First up is, thank you. I didn't know if I needed to lead into it or Tamara can do it.
To start off the night, Tony Cross with the Assistance League of Coppell will be presenting.
Test.
You're on.
Good evening. I'm Tony Cross. I'm the treasurer of Assistance League of Coppell, and I'm here to tell you about an organization that you may know little about, but it's been serving our community for over 20 years. Next slide. And I'm talking about the Assistance League of Coppell. It's an all-volunteer, nonprofit service organization. It was established in 1999 as a combination of both adult and youth members. It exists to help the youth and senior citizens in the Capell community, and I'll talk more about that later. You'll also notice in the mission and vision statements the word community. And that word is important to us because 100% of the funds that we expend on our programs are used in the local community. When you see the graph below, you'll see that our cumulative expenditures have provided $550,000 for local youth and senior services. But if you take into consideration the value of the service hours that our members provided over that time, that amount will more than triple in value. Next slide. So I want to speak about our programs. As I mentioned earlier, they're designed to help 2 vulnerable populations in our community, namely our youth and senior citizens. For local students, we partner with school staff who identify economically disadvantaged students. We can provide new school clothing, shoes, food, and other supplies. We also encourage healthy lifestyles by sponsoring drug awareness events, and we are taking a more active role now in the area of student mental health. We reward youth service. High school seniors are able to request scholarships from us based solely on community service. And for senior citizens, Our teams make weekly visits to 2 assisted living centers here in Capell. We provide companionship, we have word games, and most important to the residents, we serve donuts. Now you'll note that if you look at the statistics, the right column is the percentage of Capell citizens that are served. About 80% we consider are Capell citizens. And the balance basically are students that are living outside the city limits that predominantly attend CISD schools. And Valley Ranch is a good example, Cypress Waters, sliver of Louisville. Anyway, that's the reason that it's not 100%. Next slide. We're requesting $2,500. Since COVID's arrived, we've struggled in raising revenue. I'm sure a lot of others have as well. We've had trouble restarting our annual holiday home tour, which is our primary fundraiser. We expect a deficit for the upcoming fiscal year that begins June 1st of this year. And so your funding would help us close the gap in our deficit for the year. With your contribution, we will focus that on economically disadvantaged youth, whose families are most affected by the high inflationary situation based on feedback we received from CISD administration. Next slide. We received a short video last year from a CISD elementary school, and even with the COVID disruptions, they took the time to send a thank you for the help we provide, and we just wanted to share this with you.
Thank you.
It was working earlier. Try it again? Nope, still not working. Well, I guess I'm going to have to paraphrase. In the interest of time, each of these students was thanking us for the things we do for them, for the clothing, for the backpacks, for all the other items. Are we done with that? Let's just leave it be. I'll just go to the next slide. So, on behalf of these kids, next slide, and all the other youth and adults that we serve, our members, some of which are over there, WAVE members, want to thank you for hearing our story, and especially thank you for supporting all the nonprofits. Appreciate your time. Any questions?
Thank you very much for your presentation. Ooh, that's a little live. Council, do you have any questions? John?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm used to calling you Tony, Lion Tony, but
That'll work too.
yeah. But no, thank you and all the members for the volunteer services. I always appreciate everyone that serve in this non-profit organizations, for the community interest. The question that I had was, you had mentioned that the organization had contributed over $500,000 over the years, and I'm not sure what the yearly contributions, the funding had been in the past, but $2,500 seems quite low, and I don't know how much of an impact that's going to have with what you've been doing with the amount of money that you've been contributing or doing for the services.
Fair question. I thought about that. I said, are they going to say that's such a little amount? But it is to us. We still have our fundraisers. We started our home tour last year again after shutting it down, but we only had about 60% of the revenue that we did in the previous years, and we're struggling right now to get homes for the home tour. So if anybody's interested, we'll be happy to talk with you if you want to showcase your home on our home tour. But so we also have other forms of revenue. We sell ornaments and things of that nature. The $2,500 basically gets us close to being whole based on our deficit. We didn't want to be greedy, for lack of a better way to put it, knowing that you need to spread your funds over different organizations. But that's kind of where we were with 25. We've never requested any more than 2,500 from any individual entity, and we just thought it would be fair to ask that from you.
I just wanted to be clear, Councilmember John, this is the first request that they've ever made of the city.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
And just to clarify also, that the whole amount is not, no part of that amount is going to be actually used for scholarship, correct?
No. We have other funds that are designated for scholarship monies. We can target the donations, and we've received a little bit of money in the past, one from Atmos Energy, something from Quick Trip, and some money from another utility, and they always designate what they want that spent on, and we have to honor that.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Council?
Okay. I'll trust you this time. It's cute. You'll love it.
Thank you, my drunk obsessed. Thank you for helping us. You guys are so kind. Thank you for loving us. You guys are so generous. Thank you so much. Thank you for exploring the school. Thanks for all the love. We couldn't do it without you. Thanks for all the supplies. Just having to learn for the backpacks. PK and PKB love you.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Kristen Howell with the Children's Advocacy Center of Denton County here to speak. I'm delighted to be here today. I'm Kristen Howell.
I think you need to turn it on.
Better? There we go.
Much better, thank you.
Indeed. I'm Kristen Howell, the CEO of the Children's Advocacy Center for North Texas. We serve Denton and Wise counties and just added Jack County. We've got a small sliver of Capell in our service area, and so I want to give information to you about that. So the Children's Advocacy Center, your kids go to both the Dallas Advocacy Center and the Denton Advocacy Center, and all Children's Advocacy Centers are the place that kids go when an outcry of severe child abuse has happened. That typically is sexual abuse, but can also be physical abuse or witness to violence. From there, the coordinated investigative services are offered, and then meaning that we coordinate with the law enforcement, they're there getting the forensic interview, and then mental health services to help the family recover from abuse are served or offered at our facility. For you all to know, say an investigation happened in Dallas County, but the family lived closer to us, we could provide the mental health services that are ongoing for families in this area because we're much closer for that. And so just know that this is an important partnership for a number of levels, not just for the number of investigations that happen out of our shop. Next slide, please. Okay, so these are all the different services or the different types of crimes that happen. Sexual abuse is the primary one. About 60 to 70% every year of our cases are sexual abuse. So you all know, as informed county council members, 98% of those happen by somebody that knows and loves the child. So they have access to that child. Now this can be a family member, but it could also be a preacher, a teacher, a coach, a scout leader, any type of person who's involved in a child's life. So this can happen in any kind of community. There isn't a zip code or socioeconomic level that keeps it from happening. That sexual abuse, physical abuse is another one that we work with. Our physical abuse cases are those that rise to the level of a felony offense, so they're very severe, and then your child witnesses to violence. These are the types of crimes that have the potential to change a child's life when someone else commits them against a child. And so our job is to stop that and do the investigation and then put a halt to the abuse, and then also help the child recover and restore their full potential. This is the least expensive time to intervene in one of these crimes. It becomes an extremely difficult proposition for a child to recover from the longer time goes. Okay, next slide. This is a grand idea that we didn't just have in Denton and Dallas counties, although we were two of the very first advocacy centers in the state. There are now 70 of us strong in the state, and it is the federal or the state statute that we provide this to every child who's had a crime committed against them. So every child who has this level of allegation will go to an advocacy center. That's the rules, and all of the local police departments sign on with that and agree to that to bring every case through the center. And that's so that kids don't have to go to police departments or scary places to have these kind of crimes investigated. They can go to a child-friendly and neutral location, which is the Advocacy Center. It is in the Texas Family Code that this is the way we do it. It's what I call an underfunded mandate. So it's we get a lot of federal and state funds, but not nearly enough to provide the services in full. And then locally, we create what are called investigative protocols, and that tells us exactly what to expect from every single player in the multidisciplinary team. Next slide. So if you were to talk to your local police department, they would say, we love the Advocacy Center, and that's a really great place for us to go to get forensic interviews for our kiddos. And that's their experience of it. What it really does is open up an array of victim services that a child is eligible for when a crime's been committed against them in the state of Texas. And so one of those is a forensic interview for any child who can communicate. So a baby who has, say, a shaken baby would not be able to communicate through a forensic interview, but they would be eligible for the other array of services. So I want to be clear that it's not every child that we see gets an interview. But that forensic interview is one aspect, but so is the mental health services, the family advocacy work to help families kind of shepherd through the criminal justice system, which is a super complex system for families. We also provide the coordinated effort so that CPS and law enforcement don't run different investigations that either re-victimize the family or ruin the case. And so a coordinated effort there is a really important part of great casework and great victim services. So we also provide medical on site and do those sexual assault nurse examinations for kiddos who've had sexual assault exams. So that's the full array of services that you're paying for. And every victim is technically eligible for this, but they are referred along the way in our system. But we want to remove every single roadblock to getting these services. This is what they should get in order for a strong recovery. Okay. Next slide. So our agency recently changed its name from Denton County to North Texas, and that was because we added Wise County and Jack County. But I also want to point out that Capell is a perfect example of also why we changed it. We didn't want Denton County, that line, to become a barrier for a family who might find it easier to access this. And so that North Texas name is literally defined. We did this for your region, for Carrollton, for Frisco, all those cities around here that have multiple county lines. We don't want people to get hung up on which side of the county line they're on. We're willing to serve any kid in this area. This is about a quarter of our kids come from outside of Denton County and have traditionally. We are celebrating our 25th anniversary this year, so have been around for a long time. All right, next slide. We're an extraordinary network. As I said, this wasn't our big idea, but we were one of the first ones to come up to join it. There are 70 of us statewide. There are over 900 of us nationally. We all coordinate, so if a child was victimized at camp in Arkansas, we would work with Arkansas PD, but they were living in Coppell, they would get their services here, and they would come get their forensic interview here. We wouldn't send them to Arkansas to get that forensic interview or any part of that investigation. Your local officers would do that here. So that's how we partner together across the state and across the nation. We're a high capacity center, as is Dallas. So you are working with two of the biggest centers in the state. That's that. Next slide, please. Okay, so a snapshot quickly. Victimization of this type of victimization is it's so important to make sure that you don't, as community members, believe any part of the myth that says that this can't happen to people like me. This doesn't happen to good families. It happens in every kind of family. You all have read the newspaper long enough to know that it's happened in the gymnastics world, it's happened in the scouting world, it's happened in the Catholic Church, which has one governance model, and the Baptist Church, which has had another governance model. Bottom line is governance doesn't make this or break this. This happens because people who want to hurt kids go find kids. And so when they do, we want the response to that to be immediate and outstanding. And that's our job, to provide the response to that. And so that can happen in any of our homes. We're all eligible for this type of crime to be happening. I always say that our place is the number one place you would never want to go with your child. But I assure you, if you got that call, you would absolutely want to come to our shop. We do it right, and we do it every time for every child. The perpetrators of this violence, we used to think that they rode around in scary white vans, but we know the main place that they are is here. They are reaching our kids at record levels, and people who are safe in their homes have access to being hurt by somebody who's exploiting them online. And so we know that lots of family members are responsible for this, but the predators that have access to our kids have a whole new way of approaching kids, different than ever before. The only thing they have in common, they are at every profession, every type of person, every gender person, all the things, all the ages. The number one thing they have in common is they have access to kids. And so they are doing things with them. And so anybody who has access to kids could be one of the people who's doing this. The impact of this is lifelong. It's designed to break a kiddo. It is taking advantage of them so that it does break them and they don't tell. And it is an expensive thing. This is the most moral and financially right time to act, is when it's just happened and the child reports. All right, next slide. We have seen a massive increase in the number of cases that we have served over the last year, last 2 years. And that's been a growth trajectory, which isn't a surprise in this growing area, but has also really expanded because of COVID. Our kids were very, very stressed. You all are seeing that in all the mental health conversations around the nation and around this state. We have a major infrastructure problem on service delivery, and folks who are very stressed are stressed at new levels, and they are hurting kids and they are taking it out on kids. You can see a 31% increase in the number of cases that we read. Those are that just come into Child Protective Services. We read every one in real time. That they're given to the county. And then those that meet criteria that are at that felony level also went up 30% in the last year. So a significant increase. You can do the math on my shop. We went from 2,000 kids in 1 year to 3,000 kids the next year. That's an overwhelming number of new kids who are having this crime committed against them in this 1 year time. About 80 to 84% of our folks who are referring kids are teachers. So during COVID, we were one of the people put on the bandwagon of get kids back in school, because kids need their teachers to protect them in most cases. Okay, next one. The number of forensic interviews we conducted in Denton County was 1,500, a 29% increase in those. And those investigative interviews represent hundreds of hours of investigative and service work that's done by the other partners in our work. Next slide. We saw a big increase in the number of these are the number of case review meetings, that coordinated case. These are all the folks, basically a meeting like this with all the different players from the DA's office and law enforcement and CPS all came together 112 times in the year. So it's a big part of our work, staffing these cases. Next slide. And then we saw an increase in the number of child deaths in 2021 from 9 in Denton County to 24 in a single year. So we definitely know the abuse got worse for our kids. Next slide, please. The growth in our area has exceeded our expectations, although it here has been, relatively small. I want to be clear about that. So we thought we would see 8 kiddos from this area just based on crime stats and the numbers that we're used to seeing. We saw 11. And then the number of services they offered that they received in that array of services was 109. I like to look at an average of 12 services per client, which means that your clients in Capell are taking advantage of the services that are offered. They engage in the full array of services, which is a great thing, and we're looking for that. We always want to make sure kids have access to every service that they need, and they get better while they're getting those services, and our shop has a great record of kids getting better while they're there. Next slide. This cost at the statewide level is factored to be about $1,700 a kiddo, and so that's what we ask. We calculate in Denton County the cost of providing this service, and then we ask you for what we call your fair share of that. And so we say about 25% of the total cost that it costs us to do, we ask the city to cover. We send that to you in a request and an ask. You don't have to do it, but we think it's an important partnership. And we believe that that's your fair share as a city to make sure that if your kids have it, we've got the services available and that you're paying for that. Next slide, please. This will be the last one. So we request that $4,600 is our request, and that covers all the kids that came here last year and the services that were offered to them. And know that whether or not you pay this, we'll offer it, but it gets harder and harder every year when I have 1,000 increase in the number of kids coming in a single year. So thank you very much for your time. Are there any questions? I wish I had an adorable video. It was very, very good.
Council, questions? Kevin?
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to say thank you very much for your presentation. As someone who works with kids in my profession, I just want to thank you for the work that you guys do. I think it's important, and unfortunately, we have that need for that. So thank you for what you and your group does. I know all of us appreciate it.
I love it. Thank you very much. I'm very grateful. It's very important that we work with cities and make sure this infrastructure is here. This is a scaled way of managing it. So in an area of your size, we wouldn't necessarily recommend having your own advocacy center for that number of clients. So this is a perfect way to participate a little to make sure that every kid is covered without having to build an entire nonprofit that serves, so this is a great use of funds and scale. So just put that out there. Thank you so much for your time.
Councilmember Matthews had a question.
Thank you, yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for your service that you're providing to the Coppell residents. Out of the 11 kids, how many are from the Denton County and how many are from Dallas County?
Yeah, so I don't know that all these kids live in Capell on the Denton side, so that's where they reside. Now, if you match that with your PD, they may or may not say all those kids had their crimes committed in Capell. So maybe their crime was committed when they went to Carrollton, on the Denton, on either, wherever it was, but these are kids who live here who've had a crime committed against them who access services on our side. So, and not just access services on our side, they are from our side, the Denton County side, who access services. Does that make sense? I answered that the most confusing way possible.
No, I know that our police department does rely on your services heavily when a child is involved in Denton County, so we thank you for that very much. Anybody else? All right, thank you very much.
Great, I'm turning this off.
There we go. I am John Wilson. I am one of the vice presidents of the Coppell Community Corral. I have been with the Corral for 5 years now, and we're having elections tonight, so maybe I'll get reelected to vice president, so we'll see. We're very happy to have this opportunity to meet with you again as we did last year. Slide. Our mission is and has been for 35 years to promote, support, and sustain, enrich, and inspire the arts community. We have been Chorale for 35 years, and we never stopped. We've been self-sustaining for those 35 years. During COVID, we never stopped. We practiced on Zoom. We recorded outside in July in front of the Art Center before it was open. We recorded inside in the Art Center before there were seats, and we've just kind of kept going. Slide. So our goals are to continue to broaden the audience, rebuild our membership that we lost during COVID, and provide learning opportunities to the members of the community. Slide. We have three kind of different tiers. We have the general membership, the adult memberships over 14. We have what we call a non-audition group. So we invite everyone to come sing. If you don't know how to sing, Kevin, we'll teach you how to sing. Our next group is what we call variations. Now, you may be more familiar with variations if you don't come to a concert, because variations is our outreach group. We sang at the gala last year. On Tuesday, we sang at the Lions Club. We have sang for the veterans. We sang at the Art Stroll. So that's a little bit more exclusive of a group. There's about 15 or 20 in variations. And our children's chorale, which now is entering their third year. So we've had a lot of fun with the kiddos, teaching them how to sing, and a lot of fun just interacting with them. Slide. This year, we were able to give back to the community. For the first time, we offered scholarships. Now, these were scholarships that were money raised independently of what we're asking you here for tonight. And we gave 2 scholarships to 2 young ladies, and they basically had to write an essay that said, how has choir affected your life? One of the 2 had never sang in a choir, but she's been around the choir for her whole life. And the other one is actually thinking about being a voice major. So we opened it up to the general community. We had a point system. You got more points if you were involved with the chorale, more points if you were involved in Coppell side. And we just continue to make dynamic performances. You know, we love the new Art Center. We love having that professional touch of having professional light and sound. Next year, we're doing even more. We've actually added more concerts. There's one concert that isn't up here because the deadline got moved up and we didn't have the graphics. So in October, we're doing a thing we're calling Choir for All Ages. So the program will be the children's choir, a choir from Coppell High School, a choir from Ouachita Baptist University in Arkadelphia, and then the adult choir. And we're doing all that on a Sunday, and the idea is to literally bring the range of ages from the very young to the very old that'll be performing. And then we have our regular shows coming up. We've got another show that we're sliding in February. And then our children's chorale continues to grow. They do 5 or 6 shows. They've done some outreach stuff. They actually sang over at the Sound at Christmas time, and they very much enjoyed doing that. When we looked at coming back to you guys for another round of funding, we looked very hard at the Coppell 2040, and we think this is where we fit in providing a learning environment for what's going on in Coppell. Last year, we had our inaugural summer music series. We're bringing it back this year. Dr. Josh Brown, who used to be the high school choir director here in Coppell, he was our director for a while with the chorale. He is now a professor at Ouachita College in Arkadelphia and very much a friend of the chorale. We are bringing him back with 4 different instructors. We've even written a textbook, and unfortunately the textbook didn't get back from the publisher, or I'd share it with you. But what we're trying to do is just literally raise the music acuity of the entire community. So we'll start publicizing this very heavy in association with the Art Center, and again, is to educate the community side. And then above and beyond that, we just try to be good neighbors. We try to add to the fabric of the community. So here's our proposed budget. Last year, you were very kind in granting us monies that we're using this year for our summer classes, and there'll be fall classes. This year, we want to add a children's camp. What we find is that the public schools do a very good job with their music program, but there are some kids that just schedule-wise can't be part of the choir in the public school. So we're offering a music camp, and again, we'll teach them the very basics. And then video production. Last year, we used city money to stream 4 of our concerts live. We've decided that streaming in the hopefully post-COVID era is not needed. We find that it may have impacted some of our ticket sales. What we want to do is professionally record our programs, mix them together so they sound good, and use that for both promotion and education, because there's nothing better than watching yourself on screen and listening to yourself to see how well you have done. So the $9,000 would be broken down in exactly that form. And we've been around for a while. This is actually a picture that was taken when the Art Center was a hole in the ground. And Alex Hargis invited us to come over and do a video promotion. And some of us were silly enough to climb up a ladder and stand on a storage container. And that's it. Are there any questions?
Council?
Thanks. And I didn't put on a red cape and come in, so I toned it down.
You overwhelmed us, so there's no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Can you hear me? Oh, okay, there's my voice. Hi, so sorry Vanessa couldn't make it. She's on vacation right now. So my name is Trevor McIntosh. I am the new secretary for the Coppell Community Orchestra as of January. This is Amanda Chen. She's our new treasurer as of the past few weeks, actually. And we are here to take her place and give the presentation for today. Did you want to start us off?
Oh, sure. As this thing says, we are the Capell Community Orchestra, and this is our fifth year, our fifth season, and we just finished that out. So we'll be going into our sixth season this coming July, August this time. This season 4, season 5, that was COVID times, and it was rebuilding. And so season 6 is about doing innovative work that we haven't been doing before, and trying to broaden our horizons now.
Sure. So this is sort of just a general slide to introduce us a little bit more about how we try to engage families, educate the community, really foster sort of a broad community that can come out and enjoy our concerts and feel like they're kind of part of a bigger orchestral family. Really help bring more music and arts to Coppell, and this a lot in the same way that the chorale right before us has done. So, next slide. And then, do you want to take this one, Amanda?
Sure. So yeah, we'll just do this ping-ponging thing. So we have concerts. We have 4 concerts a year. And we also do community outreach, like for instance, we do an instrument petting zoo, that's me, and we do like community performances in various places, some at the Art Center, some at I think some churches and some other venues where we can showcase this is what orchestra is, and this is what live music is. Don't you remember it? Isn't it so nice? So, so this actually does list, we've had 2 performances donated to the St. Catherine's Church in Carrollton. There have been like several lobby performances. We do the Arts Sip and Stroll every year. And we're working on a podcast to help broaden our portfolio of things, and that's set to release in the next couple of months, hopefully.
So this is our current, a lot of this is based off our current operating budget. We are trying to become a lot more independent with our money. especially since we are going to start charging for tickets this next year. We just came to that conclusion, I believe, at our last meeting within the past few weeks. We're thinking of charging, I believe, $5 for adults and $2.50 for children, something around those lines.
Yeah, I think the point of not charging for tickets earlier was because we wanted to keep the arts as accessible as possible for everyone. But in the interest of starting to become a little bit more self-sufficient.
So I'm sorry, you really need to use the microphone when you're speaking.
Okay. Oh, yes. As I was just kind of saying, previously we weren't charging for tickets because we wanted to keep the arts as accessible as possible for everyone. That was the reason why we were not charging at all. But in the interest, we know that we do ask a lot in terms of the grant, and so in the interest of trying to be a little bit more self-sufficient in that way, we are starting to charge a fee for our tickets. Also, if you see the bottom, we have ticket sales. We've also got donations and sponsors who pay for advertising space on our programs. We have North Texas Giving Day, the grant, of course. We're extremely, extremely grateful for the grant money, which is the main driver of the community orchestra. We also have a fall ball and silent auctions, and those are also streams of future funds that will be able to help kind of like guide us toward, I guess, financial independence a little bit more so. Okay.
So Amanda's already mentioned it. This slide just kind of goes over the podcast that we're thinking of doing. That will mostly be Vanessa and our conductor, Cecilia, that will be managing that. They basically want to try to bring on as many sort of local musicians, teachers, any famous, semi-famous guests we can get on, just to talk about music and just sort of add to the community conversation even more and help sort of promote our group. So, next slide. Oh, you want to take this one?
I think, as you can kind of tell, our mission is to kind of not just perform and play beautiful music, but also to kind of keep the arts alive and to kind of bridge this gap between maybe our classical music high tower here and the rest of the community, so that we can kind of enrich the community and kind of I don't know where I was going with that, but that's okay. She talks about the symphony here. So an exciting new project that we're going to be taking on, which is the main reason why our grant request has increased this year. It is the only reason. That is the entire increase is the symphony that we're taking on. It's a project that will be based and inspired by sounds of Capell. And Trevor can talk to you more about that because I think he will be heavily involved in all of that. But that is a really exciting project that will be debuted next year in May. It is just getting started now. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So I can say a little bit more about that. I don't know how much of y'all are in the loop. I haven't been around the City Council of Coppell before. But sort of like Amanda said, we were inspired to do this project by the city of Toronto in Canada, did something very similar. So I believe we currently have a website up, a portal that people can go to from now until September 1st, I believe is the cutoff date. So we really need to advertise it out there because we want the people who live in Coppell to sort of post any sounds of Coppell around the city that they feel inspired to put online, and it can be sounds, it can be music they've written about Coppell. They're going to put little snippets in that portal, And then come September 1st, at the cutoff date, I, the composer, am going to take those sounds, pick the ones that I like, that I feel are the most practical to work with. And from about September through November or December, I believe it is on the calendar there, I will be composing a symphony about the city of Coppell, using not only the sounds and the snippets of music that I've been provided, but also writing original music to sort of just, write a big piece about the city that we can rehearse and premiere in, I believe, March. And I specifically want to write a piece that not only incorporates the sounds of Coppell, but sort of tells a little bit about the history of the city. And so I will be doing research over the summer to sort of compile the information that I need, the blueprints I need to complete that symphony. So, okay, I'll let you do this one.
Music, future of music and beyond. So this is just it commemorated our COVID times and our Zoom times. We can move on. It's all right. So these are the things that are happening this upcoming season. We are doing a lot. It looks like we've got the podcast in July. We've also got a benefit concert in June. Sip and Stroll in October. Fall Ball fundraiser in October as well. That will be really cool. We'll be playing live music, and you can pretend that you are in old times and actually dance to the music. And there will be a dance instructor there in case you don't know how to dance. So that will be fun. Christmas concert, Cartoon Christmas with characters, bringing music to life. We've got another concert in March and another one in May, and that's when it looks like the symphony will be unveiled. So we've got a really busy season planned. Lots to do with your money. Yeah. So if you have any questions for us.
So council, any questions? Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. So the slide before that, it looks like you guys actually had 8 performances that are scheduled for upcoming year.
So this slide,
Right.
it shows everything that we're doing
Until 2023, right?
until
Okay.
May of 2023.
So how many performances have you guys held since last year?
So traditionally we do 4 concerts a year. This also includes events, which are, some of them are community. For instance, the Sip and Stroll, we are there to donate our performance and our time, but we're not going to be charging tickets for that because that's not our event. We are there though, if that makes sense.
Okay, and
I was just going to say, just adding on to what she said, we basically do one concert a season with everyone pulled together, big orchestra stuff. And then we ask for volunteers from the rest of the orchestra to see if they want to do sort of little small chamber ensembles for a lot of little mini events. She mentioned it earlier, we've played for churches and just other little, community outreach events. So it'll vary, at least in the small ensemble stuff, but we have 4 sort of primary concerts that we work on, one a season.
Right. So really it's, our concerts would be October, December, March, and May.
so 4 a year, basically.
4 a year, yes.
Okay. And so last year, you guys had the funding for $14,800 for to support for 4, I'm guessing, performances.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and so the grant proposal kind of lists what we use that money for. So it we spend that money on sheet music to build our library because we like to follow laws about intellectual property. And so we would like to continue building that music library so we have more variety to play. We also, it goes towards the conductor honorarium to pay our conductor, equipment rental and purchase, percussionists, and to help fill in some gaps and make our performances better. That's all. We are still planning to use the same amount as before for that. That hasn't changed. The only increase comes because of the symphony project, where we are composing the symphony for the Capell
Right.
community.
But you're also going to start charging, and what is the expectation of revenue from that, based on what the attendance was in the previous performances?
That is a good question that we have not really worked on projections for projected revenue in that sense. I don't think it will be a substantial amount because, as Trevor said, it'll probably be like $5 for adults.
I think. Yeah, I mean, we obviously don't have specific numbers, unfortunately, because this will be the first year that we're doing this. But at least based on the attendance that I've seen during my past year here, I think, even just charging, the mild amount that we will be for tickets, it'll be a nice supplement to our revenue, but probably not enough to supply the increase that we're needing for grants.
And the reason why I was asking is because, and you mentioned about being self-sufficient and start charging the amount, so I was actually expecting the request to be going downwards, not upwards. Even if it's not this year, I'm thinking that in the projected going forward, is that something that you're expecting? Because I'm thinking, yeah, that's fine, you charge now, but I'm just wondering why the fundings are going to be going up. Are you going to come back with every new project and ask for more next year? And
no, I think that this project is. We're only expecting the one project. We're not. Of course, we're not. We're open to any new projects, and then we'll talk about that. But this is a collaboration with the city, I think, and it's where. This is just a one-off. The rest of it will, I think it will be better when we've done a season and we can come back and we can give you numbers on how much we actually got in terms of ticket sales and how much we can reduce our grant by. And especially with these additional avenues that we're just trying out this year, like the fall ball and the silent auctions. These are things that we've also added on, and we don't have any information to base on to realistically say, okay, this is how much we can really start reducing the grant by.
thank you.
Councilmember Neville?
Thank you, Mayor. It's fun standing up here getting grilled by a bunch of people, isn't it?
Totally. It's so fun. Yeah.
No. So my question, I actually wanted to tag along on what Councilmember Jim was saying about I heard you mention a 5-year plan for trying to become self-sufficient on that. So I just didn't know, like, if the increase, like, basically when the start of that 5-year self-sufficiency plan was going to be, or is that going to be more like a supplementation plan? Like, you still want to maybe get a grant from the city, but obviously increase your overall budget. I was just kind of curious about what that 5-year plan looked like, but I think just tagging on what he said. So I didn't know if you had anything else to expand upon what you just said about that 5-year plan.
So everything, I think right now we are planning on everything we're doing to be more supplementary to the grant, because we've been really relying on the grant, and we know that's really generous of you guys. So we are trying to get towards that, but that's something that I, as treasurer, am going to have to talk with Vanessa, and we're going to have to work on that, and we'll get back to you guys on that.
Council, any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
we go. Good evening. Unlike the others, I can't sing and I don't play an instrument. But I do want to tell you about social services. So Mayor, Council, Mr. Land, thank you very much for having me. Tell you a little bit what's going on with MetroCrest, what's going on as it relates to Coppell residents, and then discuss our funding requests for this year. Next slide. Always want to make sure, I don't want to make assumptions that everybody always knows what we do. And so our mission is all about self-sufficiency. It's always been about helping with the basic needs, the crisis. And that's been very apparent the last 2 years. But we also want to make sure we focus on those things that allow families to regain their independence. And so we're very focused on that. Our core values, we treat everybody that walks in with dignity and respect. We want to make sure that we're an amazing place to work. Our employees, you know me because you see me do this, but the amazing work is done back at our place by some 50-plus amazing people. And then many of you have volunteered with us. We couldn't do what we do without volunteers. Just one stat I was going to throw out while I was just thinking about it. As we talk about numbers overall for us, they've gone up dramatically, obviously, but about 44% of those that we serve every year are under the age of 18. So 44% of those we serve are under the age of 18. So we're serving a lot of families, whether it be Coppell or Carrollton or Farmers Branch or Addison. A lot of kids, about 9 to 10% of those we serve are considered seniors. So just want to throw that out while I was thinking about it. On the next slide, we have Coppell-specific statistics, and I'll just throw out a few of them. Served, and this is a rolling 12. So we just did a rolling 12 because things have changed so dramatically year over year. This is the last 12 months. 665 residents have received about 3,500 services. A service might be a visit to the pantry, meeting with a workforce specialist, etc. About $160,000 spent on rent, utilities. The average rent that we're paying right now is about $1,365, a 63% increase over the previous year. So we're finding that two things are happening. Rent costs are going up, and then the contribution that we are making to that family's rent is higher because often that family doesn't have income or sufficient income to be able to make the same contribution they would have made, let's say, 2 or 3 years ago. We've had 1,500 visits from Coppell residents to our food pantry in the last 12 months. And the last two items have to do with workforce and financial empowerment, our financial literacy programs. These are our self-sufficiency and dependence programs. I will tell you, honestly, the last 2 years have been difficult for these programs because so many families are just focused on, I need to stay housed, I need to stay fed, I need to keep the lights on. It's hard to engage people with looking ahead and building budgets and working on credit scores, etc., when they're really just worried about, can I keep my kids in their home school? Can I stay in my home? So we're beginning to build those back up again, and we always do it, but the numbers are increasing now. So next slide. So just a history of number of Coppell residents that we serve. I was telling someone that I was getting to Coppell to give this presentation, and they said Coppell has no poverty and Coppell has no hunger. What are you doing over there? And I think that what we've seen over the years, there has been an increase in the number of residents of Coppell who've sought our assistance. The number of kids in the school district that are economically disadvantaged, that number has hovered in that 9 to 11% range for quite a while now. And so you kind of see how the numbers spiked, obviously, during the pandemic. They've come down a little bit. This year, year to date, so 2/3 of our year is over. We're at about 549 Coppell residents. We suspect we'll serve about 700 to 725. It's hard to project over the next 4 months total. And then in fiscal year 23, which is part of the presentation or the proposal that we sent you, we expect to serve about 699 Coppell residents. So while I'm on this slide, I was going to stop. I don't have a slide that shows how much we're asking, but I'd like to verbalize that while we're here and have these numbers in front of us. In the past 3 years, for sure, maybe further back, you've been generous and provided us about $90,000. Not about, $90,000. And typically, that is about 30% of what we spend on Coppell residents. So whenever you get that summary from us each year, as you did this year, we've asked for what equates to about 30%. We didn't create that formula at some point. We didn't say this is the right one. That's just where we have fallen over the years, and you've been incredibly generous as a community to assist us at that level. We're asking for $135,000, and that is based on the 30%. So what happened this past year, the year that we're in right now, when we requested $90,000 this time last year, we suspect a lot of people that things were going to be better. That a lot of our clients that we serve, the families that we serve, were going to be in a better position, and that really just hasn't happened for us. our lines in our pantry are as long as they were, well, they're as long today as they were at the height of the pandemic, which is shocking to me. So we went into this year thinking we're going to pull back. We're going to spend about $300,000 on Coppell residents. $90,000 is about 30% of that. We actually spent about $477,000 on Coppell residents this year, and we anticipate spending about $450,000 next year. So 30% of $450,000 is $135,000, which is how we got to this increase. So the increase for us really is about that we're serving more Coppell residents. We're spending a lot more per resident because the cost of housing's gone up. They're coming to our food pantry more often. And so we're asking for that 30% as we've had in the past. It just happens to equate a much larger number. I'm not asking that or implying that 30% is the perfect number. It could be 25, it could be 35. Again, you've been very generous compared to your peers over the years, and so we appreciate that. I just want to give you the rationale of why we asked for was essentially $45,000 more than we'd asked for the previous year. That's the overview on the funding. The last slide, I don't know if you know, we're building a building. Have I told you that? So I appreciate your support from a city perspective, individually. We hope to open in April of 2023. We've raised $12.6 million of the 15.8, so about 80%, which I'll be honest, shocks the heck out of me because our budget doubled this past 2 years. And so raising money for a new building we thought might be a little more difficult. It certainly has not been easy. But this last 20% we hope to raise in the next 12 months. We will be debt-free. We will not have a mortgage. We'll use those savings that we currently have because currently we're paying about $20,000 a month in rent payments. We'll lose that. We won't have a mortgage. We'll put that toward people. And so we're excited about that. So just make sure that you know the progress we're making. We do appreciate your support of this project. All of our cities have helped, and we're doing our best to raise individual funds to be able to finish it off. So I wanted to share that while I was here, in case you didn't know we're building a new building. So any questions that you might have for me in terms of services for Coppell residents or the justification for the increase?
Council? Tracy, I had one.
Yes, sir.
Post-pandemic, which we're still not really post-pandemic, have you seen, other than the fact that general costs have gone up across the board, has there been a shift in services that you've been providing?
So let me think about that. I would say first, in terms of the current level of demand, the current level of demand is at the same level it was a year ago and frankly in the first year of the pandemic. So what concerns us today is that basic economics are beginning to take place as it relates to inflation, the stock market in decline, and people losing wealth. Is that the demand for our services is going up dramatically, and the donations from individuals are going down dramatically. So we have this issue right now of donations, of not being self-sufficient on a monthly basis. We do tap reserves to be able to cover our gap, which we saved for this purpose. So we're in good shape, but we are seeing the demand go up. So the big thing for us that has increased dramatically is homelessness. So it's not the answer you probably thought you were going to get. We've added more workforce specialists. We've added more financial literacy specialists. We're able to get out more and do more training and education. But we've had to hire a director of homeless resources for the first time. And so we literally had today, I had lunch with Sammy Lujan today and other chiefs, and we had a homeless coalition meeting today as we begin to build the foundation of how should we respond to homelessness, no matter what that looks like. If that is someone behind the convenience store, someone living in their car, someone at what will be a DART station in your area at some point. What are we going to do? What's the best way to respond to these individuals from our perspective? We're in our community, and we want to see what they need. And sometimes what they need we can't do. It's not reasonable. But that is the area, unfortunately, that we're having to spend resources. And so we're going to make sure we put together a good plan there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Councilor Merjan.
Thank you, Mayor. You building a building?
Let me tell you about it.
No, thank you for the input on that, because I was going to ask you about why that's 50% increase from last year, and you did explain that as well. But I was just wondering, you talked about the demand has gone up, but have you seen more of the, I guess, those that have sought assistance, are they continue to be a repeat, or do you see a change of people that were needing it, but they're kind of coming off and an additional flux is coming in?
Sure. You know, it's a hard question to answer because everybody that comes to us in a different place. So those that come to us, and the first year, 40% of the people came to us, first year of the pandemic, had never asked for help before. So those folks finally asked for help, we provide them assistance, and they are probably all back to being self-sufficient. The folks that are coming back to us over and over again are those folks that when we entered the pandemic were already in a deep hole economically. So we just deepened their hole during the pandemic. And so those folks are still struggling to get out. So for those types of families, they used to come visit our pantry, for instance, 5 or 6 times, 5 or 6 visits, and then they're fine. That might be 8, 9, 10 visits now. So it's taking a little bit longer to no longer need our assistance. And there's no doubt we've had people that have been coming back to us in our pantry for months who have not secured employment yet. And so it is just taking longer based on where they started. So if you started unskilled, maybe you lacked the education necessary for quality jobs, it's taking you a lot longer. Our workforce division is busier than it's ever been. In the month of May, the average wage our client was able to obtain during the month of May was $20.06. So pretty good wage. We're finding employers beginning to pay more what we believe are respectable wages. So we're pushing hard to make sure folks find jobs, but find jobs at that kind of level.
And I don't know if the 30% that you calculated is actually what you asked for in other cities, but I'm guessing with the increase, you are actually going back to other cities and asking for, is that the case, increase of the support?
That's a good question, one that Coppell has always focused on a lot. And so Addison is probably most similar to you. I could not tell you the percentage off the top of my head for Addison, but it's in the same range, and historically has been in the same range. I present to them in a couple weeks on that. So on Carrollton and Farmers Branch, this year we're not asking for an increase because we're in a 3-year contract. So each of those cities, Carrollton first and Farmers Branch, started a 3-year contract process. So instead of us asking for funds every year, they set the bar at a certain level, and they built in annual increases, and then every 3 years we have to go through the process again. And so I would say their percentage of what they provide us versus what we spend on their residents, Carrollton Farmers Branch, are significantly less as a percentage than what you provide us for Coppell residents. So for Farmers Branch, it might be about 20%. Carrollton, while it's the most money we receive by far, is probably 15%.
Okay, thank you.
Tracy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You guys have had a rough couple of years, as is everybody else, and it's always good to see the good work you're doing, so thank you.
Thank you.
Here, we'll pass them down.
Thank you for allowing us to present. After listening to all the services out there and the wonderful things you do, I hesitate to actually go through this presentation because our focus is actually bringing visitors to Coppell. And we started looking at this because we made a lot of changes in the Historical Society in the last year, and I'd like to go over a few of them with you to show you where we are now. For the year 2022, in February, we took the houses, and we had always opened them once a month, and we got about 4 or 5 people. We started opening them every weekend, and we now get between 30 and 40 visitors a week. And although that's certainly not at the level that we want to be, that's significantly better than we've had. In April, the Society completed the 1950 Wilson House, and we added it to the tour. As many of you might know, that house has been being worked on for the last couple of years. If you haven't been over there, you really need to go see it. It's really something special, and we're very happy it's now on the tour. In May, we began preparations to open the Vineyard store in October, and I'll talk a little bit about that. June through August, we are serving snow cones, my personal favorite. Yes, Mike, my personal favorite. And when we serve the snow cones on the back porch of the house, it's really great. You get kids and you get parents, and we usually serve about 30 to 45 snow cones when we open it up. We have a sign out front that says snow cones. And what we haven't done in the past, but we are going to do now, is we have a communications committee, which Maureen Cochran is head of, and we are getting some publicity out there to come get the snow cones. They're free. You'd be surprised, adults really like them almost more than the kids, so they kind of drag their kids in there, and then everyone's happy. June, we kicked off a schedule of classes that are in the house. The classes, if you look at your May water bill, you will notice that, again, Maureen put the information in there about the tie-dyed class. And so we're running a series of classes in the house to bring the children and the parents into the park. July, we have a children's camp that goes over skills that are kind of forgotten, sewing, cooking, cutting things out. And again, we bring usually the parents and the children in, so that's a lot of fun. October is our big event of the year. Again, Maureen Cochran is in charge of it. It's the Pioneer Days. Pioneer Days, when we did it pre-pandemic, we had about 790 visitors. We're not sure exactly how many we had because you can get into the park 3 different ways, and it goes on for several hours. And the big thing about that event is we have a petting farm. I said it right, I didn't say zoo. Petting farm. And that's the thing that has the line in it, all the hours that we're open. And you know, some of the kids that come in, they've never seen a farm animal in person, and they've certainly never petted one. So you would be shocked at how exciting this is to children and their parents to come do that, and that is in October. The other thing that's happening in October is that we are going to have the grand opening of the Vineyard store. Now, the Vineyard store has been open for tours for quite some time, but what is changing is that we're actually going to sell Coppell branded products in that store. I know from talking to the chamber that the most often requests they get is for Coppell branded products. There are none in Coppell. There's nowhere they can send them. So we are going to have that in the store, as well as homemade items, vintage items, and it's going to be something really special. With the opening of that store, we're also going to have a seed repository. And that may sound strange to some of you, but what we're doing, and a lot of cities do this, is we're having seeds that were grown in Coppell and surrounding areas, and you can come in and you can get your seeds with your children, and then you can take them and plant them. And the whole idea is that when it grows and the seeds come back and that you get seeds in the fall, that you bring them back in to the society so that you're part of that Coppell experience. Other cities have had a lot of success with that. So that's in October. In November, we'll start decorating the houses for Christmas. One of the things that's happened this year that's very positive is we have a volunteer coordinator. He was the volunteer coordinator for Grapevine, Grapefest for years. And as you know, it's a big event. He actually lives here in Coppell, and he has offered to help us to get volunteers in the house. And so he will be coordinating that event to have the people that are decorating the houses be scouts and local organizations, so that the city can come in, you know, and the community can come in and decorate the houses. That will bring in, you know, as you know, parents, whoever, to come into the park as well. The society will also participate in Vintage Christmas again. Vintage Christmas was a city run event that they had all the people in Old Town open up. What we did last year is we had a Mr. and Mrs. Claus, and we had almost 100 children come by and see Mr. and Mrs. Claus. I will also tell you we weren't really prepared for that, and so we kept having to go buy candy canes. It was a little strange. But anyway, this year, Maureen's group will be sending that out, and so we will be more prepared for more kids. That was a big event. They took pictures, they got candy, you know, wrapped candy canes, and it brought them into the store and into the park. New event this year is that we have holidays in the park. And the reason holidays with an S is it's the first of the holiday events that will be in the park. It's really going to be interesting. Each house will be decorated for Christmas based on the year of the house is. For instance, the 1950s Wilson house will have an aluminum tree in it. And for those of you as old as I am, you remember aluminum trees. And that's actually the aluminum tree that the Wilsons owned that are in that house. Each house will have carolers. They will be middle and high school students. The people that go on the tour will have sheet music, so it's kind of a sing-along Christmas music. And each house will have their different era represented. When you get through with that tour, you'll go get some wassail. You'll stroll through the park, and we think it's going to be quite impressive. The Society is also partnering with the Dallas Historical Society for events and park activities, and they are sending out our park activities in their communications as well. So that's something we haven't done in the past. So why are we here asking for money? Because all of what I just read is done with volunteers. And so we looked at how we could bring more people to Coppell. That's what started us looking. Here's what we found. We found if we can get the collection that we have designated as a museum, then we can bring other people to Coppell. The handout that I had given you, if you'll look on the back page, I highlighted it for you. University of Texas did a study about the impact of historical preservation on communities, and their conclusion is that even history museums in the smallest communities across the state attract thousands of visitors annually. Thousands. So, if you can get designated as a museum, and you can get on the Texas list to say you're a museum, then they essentially do the almost the advertising for you, because they do several times a year. They send out a list. They maintain a list on their website. And so that's something that we would like to do. So how are we going to get there? That's the reason for the request. In order to get there, we have to get the collection certified, number one. We have to have someone on site, because in order to be a museum, you need regular hours. And while our volunteers are wonderful, we don't have anyone that wants to sit over in the park for 30 hours a week and do that. So we really need a staff member to do that. And we've had a kind of a part-time staff member, but that is not going to get us where we need to be. So what would the manager do? They're going to help us obtain museum status. We want to see if we can qualify for the Texas Preservation Trust Fund grants. There's a lot of grants out there for historical parks, so that we wouldn't have to come back to the city for so much money. And we're going to look into what we can do in that area. We also need to liaison with the Texas Historical Committee to help us do these things. We need to liaison with the chamber and work on joint projects with them. One of the things we would like to do, and this goes to something else that's going on, is we want to open a visitor center in the park. I think you're all aware of the house and all of that. The visitor center would do a couple of things. Coppell does not have a visitor center. I am aware that the chamber is at some point going to look into that. I've had long conversations with Ellie, and she says it's at least a year or two out before that's probably going to come to fruition. So our thought process was, as long as we're going to open our visitor center for the park, we could also have a visitor center that does some of the things she may be doing in the future, such as having brochures on businesses that are local, etc. It would bring people into the park, and then when she's ready to do whatever she's ready to do, we certainly will bow out of that. But right now, we have nothing. So this seemed to be a good stopgap measure for us to be able to help out the city and also get the park up and running. So we feel that we really do need a person on site. I can't figure out how we're going to get museum status and do that if we don't have someone. So that's the reason for the request. The other thing that will be changed, obviously, if we do this, is that, we need to do some open regular houses. We need to send a newsletter out that says, here's the event of the park, and here is the seeds that are here that you can come get. And to give you an example, the first about 400 seeds that we have are hollyhock outhouse seeds. And these seeds were planted around outhouses in the south. And it did two things. They're really tall. They grow about 10 feet. And they were there because women didn't like the outhouses, and they thought they were ugly. So they planted these flowers around them to, number one, show people where it was, and number two, it made them pretty. So those are the kind of seeds we want to bring in with the stories, how to plant them, and we think that will be a really good thing to do. So we're actually here requesting the funding under the hot tax for the upcoming fiscal year. We hope at the end of this year, and I feel confident we can do some of it, that we can be more self-sufficient once we look at the grants and fundraisers and things that we're looking at. But that's what we're asking for. And in conclusion, I would say this. You know, in working with the city, it's been interesting because what I've realized is that when the city goes out and they look at the park, and all of you know where the park is, right? Small park, you know. The city sees old buildings, maintenance issues, and they see staff time. And that's their job. I mean, that's what they're there for. We see, which is kind of interesting when we talk about this, we see the families that come out for the snow cons and the petting farm. And we see the activity in the park that brings families together in Coppell. We also see the future, which is looking at our strolling in the park and the caroling and all the things that are coming to Coppell. And we see children and families that pick up seeds in the spring and they return them in the fall. And so that's how we see the park. So what we're hoping by getting this museum status, that we can attract several thousand, which is what the study says, to the city of Coppell as part of the tourist program. Questions? Yes.
Councilmember Hill.
Hey, Mark.
Hey, thanks for the presentation. So the current ask that you have, you don't see that as being ongoing if you get the grants, but there's a ramp-up period. Do you see that as 3 years, 5 years at this level?
You know, I would say 3 from what I have done the research on. The state actually has, I was surprised, significant grants for this type of museum, for this age group of homes. Our collection, interestingly enough, is quite extensive. It's surprising how much is in there. And I know this will be kind of strange, but from the Mrs. Beasley doll from the 50s to the sewing machine from the 40s, which is a very interesting thing, to all of these things from 1903. I mean, it is really an impressive collection. But the one thing I should tell you is that what we have that no one else has is that vintage store. That is a big deal. And getting that up and running and selling the branded products for Coppell, I mean, it doesn't get any better than saying, for the chamber, which they've said they would do, saying, oh, you can go get branded products over here, and buying them in a vintage store. I mean, that's something that doesn't exist in the state. So we feel like we can utilize that to get additional money. We also are looking into fundraising opportunities that we don't have now because we're not a museum, and I think that could be significant as well.
Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome.
Councilmember John.
Thank you, Mayor. I think what you said today is probably what I would have heard from Cliff in 30 plus years.
Okay.
No. But
I talk a lot. I'm sorry. And I'm loud.
But anyway, no, I appreciate all the information. But you talked about some revenues, right? Selling products and so forth, and things of that nature. Is there an expectation of what amount that's going to be to contribute towards being self-sufficient in the future?
I don't know the answer to that. What I think will make us self-sufficient, I mean, the products will certainly help. And we've talked about taking the products out, whether it's to the farmer's market or whatever, to get them out into the community. Ellie has assured me they're getting those requests every week, and they have nowhere to send them. So yes, I think that will contribute. But what I think the big revenue issues are from my study with the state is that we can get grants, matching grants. And so if we can raise 30,000, we can get 30,000. I think that's the sort of activity that's going to make this self-sufficient, and I think it'll take 2 to 3 years.
So it's safe to say that, this is going to come back next year with a similar?
I hope not.
Okay.
You know, I'm not going to say it will, because one of the reasons we want the money is to hire someone who will go after that. I mean, in other words, when we hit the ground running on this, our first priority is to get the museum status, and our second priority is to start figuring out how to raise money. I mean, that's the reality.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Councilmember Carroll.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Long. Make sure I didn't get the timeline incorrect. The process to be designated a museum, is that something that could happen in the next year, or is that something that's going to end up taking 2 or 3 years?
That can happen a couple of months after our funding. We've been working on that. I should have said that. For almost a year, we have everything in place. We have all the collections designated. We have them cataloged. We have all of that. And so now it's a matter of applying and doing any additional work.
Okay, so that designation could happen in the near term.
We're expecting it to happen near term.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Councilmember Nevels.
Hey, Chris.
Okay.
So I heard you speak a little bit about the chamber and their desire in the future to open or facilitate a convention and visitors bureau. Can you go into a little bit more depth about, you said something about the chamber would take over certain responsibilities that you were talking about. Could you dive into that just a little bit more?
You know, when we talked about a visitor center, one of the concerns was that at some point in the future, the chamber may make that move, okay, to do that. I went and talked to Ellie specifically because I don't want to do anything that steps on her agenda or that conflicts with her agenda, because we all need to be moving forward and helping each other. And what she told me was that it would be a year or two before they're ready to even make that move. So from where I sit, we can take the visitor center that we're going to open for the park anyway because of the museum, and it can be a Coppell's visitor center, whether it's someone that has kayaking down at the Trinity River or whatever, the art center, et cetera. We can offer those brochures and we can do that amount of work because there's nothing else here. Now, if in 2 years Ellie comes back, or whoever's with the chamber, I shouldn't have said Ellie, comes back and says, we want to open a visitor center, the society would never try to duplicate those services. But where we are right this minute and where we're going to be for a couple of years is there is nowhere to send anybody. Does that answer your question?
No, it does. Thank you. I guess, what do you see in the future where, because I'm thinking about, funding employees and stuff. I understand that your request for the additional $97,000 in the request, that's to go out and find somebody to help you, a full-time staff member with the designation, but also the fundraising so you guys can become financially independent. Do you see any future overlap with what the chamber might be doing with the Convention Center Bureau and what you guys are doing with a visitor center for the Historical Society or Heritage Park?
No, and the reason is if and I'm going to say if, they come back and want to do the visitor center, and I think we're a long way off from that based on her conversation, I mean, not what I'm assuming. I think that at that point you still need a visitor center for the museum, because by that time we will be a museum. We will have these other activities going on, so that's going to stay a visitor center. If they do a, quote, visitors and convention center for Coppell, then you just drop here are the brochures and the conversations you're going to have when people come in the next year or two. So no, I don't. This is actually an accommodation, in my mind, to the city, because for the next 2 years, there's going to be nothing out there. But our goal is not to step on any progress she wants to make, obviously.
Thank you.
Council, any other questions? Thank you very much, Chris. Appreciate the presentation.
Well, I appreciate y'all's time.
Mike.
There he is. I've been sworn to secrecy, I can't shoot.
That concludes the service organization presentations for tonight.
So we have, obviously, part of our challenge here is to come up with an allocation that we feel is equitable. You guys want to take a 3-minute break and go get some ice cream and then come back and tackle that one? All right, we'll recess for about 5 minutes.
That might have been your.
Let's be moseying back over. Don. Don is, or Marcus. I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will be. All right, the time is 7:46 p.m. and we're going to reconvene into a work session for the Coppell City Council. We are just concluding item number 3. We were having a bit of a discussion on the allocation of the funding. Councilmember Hill.
Yes, Wes. I think in the past we've taken a little time to digest the presentations and the amount of money being requested, and actually made this decision at a subsequent meeting. And I was wondering if we might ought to do that here, unless you guys are ready to say yay or nay, or so. I'm just asking.
Well, from a meeting standpoint, Kim and Tamara still have quite a bit of material to go through. From a scheduling standpoint, I'm not sure we're going to be able to get through with everything tonight anyway. So I would be open to, but it's going to be a consensus of the council to defer that to a later meeting. Councilmember Carroll.
It's just, there's really just 2 that probably need to be discussed. I mean, most everything else is relatively straightforward, I'm assuming. Is that fair to say?
Well, all 6 of the organizations that presented tonight actually had increases in their funding.
Yeah, but aren't we talking $1,000 here or there? I mean,
In
I'm
some
not saying we
cases-
can't talk about them, I'm just
In
saying.
some cases, yes, that's correct.
The significant ones, there's 2 significant, what I would say are significant ones. And actually, and I apologize for being late, but, and y'all may have already covered this, but YMCA, they did not present, and why did they not present?
Per the service org memo, it states that any new organization requesting funding and/or any service organization that is requesting an increase from prior year will need to present. YMCA did not increase their amount that they are requesting.
The note here says it was $20,000 last year and just a one-time grant, and I thought the memo said if it's a one-time grant, it reverts back to the other. And maybe it doesn't matter, but they didn't. I guess I took that as an increase, actually. The YMCA was actually increasing theirs, because I forget what the one-time grant was, what it was associated with.
Council, or if I could.
Councilmember Nevels?
If I recall, it was increased expenses due to, it was like childcare for COVID, is what they had said. Does that sound right to everyone? Vicki, you recall that? That's what I recall in the meeting last year, was that they had incurred extra expenses because they were taking on public service, their children and things like that. So they were requesting additional funds to cover.
But it was just one time, correct?
And yes, this note, it was a $20,000 grant with a $10,000 one-time payment was the structure that we had put in place last year.
They should have presented, per the memo. Maybe it doesn't matter, but.
No, quite all right. Just turn on the microphone and.
No,
so we can
sorry.
hear you.
No, you're right. It is an increase because it was a one-time grant, and it should have gone back to 20,000. But if it was 30,000, they should have made the presentation. They didn't.
I agree.
So they were not invited to present, so that would be our oversight, and so we could ask them to come back another time and present to you, if you would like to hear from them.
Right.
With a work session?
I believe that would be appropriate.
Okay,
Yes.
we'll invite them to come to the work session.
So if that's appropriate, then I think we should probably consider taking up Councilmember Hill's proposal that we discuss the allocation after we hear from the Y then. Councilmember Matthews.
Yeah, thank you,
Or
Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm in favor of that.
What's that? That's what I said, didn't I? Oh.
We can be casual.
Well, I called him council member, so then I realized it was. Mike was pointing out that since this is a work session, we don't usually go formal, so I apologize. All right. Don.
One additional question on the Historical Society, to make sure I'm understanding correctly. So we have, there was the amount that they asked for today, which is sort of the recurring, I wouldn't say the operational piece, but the moving of the building, when do we discuss that?
We discussed that Tuesday.
This coming to next
Tuesday.
Tuesday? Well, we didn't decide anything, right?
No, we did not.
Okay, just recall, we presented Tuesday night so you would have a background knowing that you were going to get the presentation tonight so that you would ask your questions tonight about how many visitors and all those kind of things that you talked Tuesday night. Now, as far as when y'all want to discuss that, y'all decide when y'all want to discuss that.
Okay.
You have work sessions, the next 3 meetings, I guess, in terms of budget discussions. So,
Well, my apologies. I thought they were originally, and I saw when I was preparing, I thought they were going to ask for the whole 300 or whatever the number is. But
no.
I thought that was the prep. That was what the prep was on Tuesday night. But so we will discuss that in the future. Okay. Oh, moving. I got it. I got it.
So where did we land? Okay, we'll defer the further discussion to a meeting to be determined in July at some point. Whether that's a work session on the 12th or a special call meeting for a work session at some point. Let's take a look and see how our calendar for July is working out. Okay, thank you very, very much. All right, item number 4 is a presentation regarding our special revenue funds. Ms. Smith and Ms. Tien.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight you will see some main themes, or some common themes on annual salary and benefits adjustments and revenue restrictions for special revenues. DUD, IMF, ROMC, and CRDC will all have annual adjustments to their salary and benefits. More will be discussed on Tuesday at the budget workshop. Also, each special revenue fund has a set limit of restrictions for the use of their funds. You are handed a comprehensive list of all of the special revenues. Tonight we will highlight a few that have notable activity. Funds with asterisks by their name are new to the special revenue funds. Public Education Special Revenue Fund, Public Education and Governmental Channel Special Revenue Fund, and E911 Special Revenue Fund are all new to the special revenue funds. These 3 funds were accounted for in the general fund as restricted. Because of their restriction, they act like a special revenue fund. This year, we have moved them to the special revenue funds to track their revenues and expenditures. The first special revenue that we will talk about tonight is the HOT. For fiscal year 23, the HOT fund's total revenue is $361,500, and the total expenditures are $161,197. For revenues, the hotel occupancy tax is based on 4 open hotels at $170,000 per quarter. And this is based off the fiscal year 21 actuals. The economic development is the rebated amount to hotels for building in Coppell. This amount is based on the 4 open hotels and their contracted rebated amounts. For the expenditures, in this count, they are for the service organizations. Note that this amount is the total for all of the special revenues service organizations that we went over tonight. That would be historical or any of the arts and so it would be
the Coppell Arts Council, Coppell Community Chorale, Coppell Community Orchestra, and the Coppell Historical Society. That's the total. So this is for you to determine. We just wanted to show what the total amount would have been if you approve this. This can be amended and changed at your request. Do you have any questions over the HOT fund?
Bijou?
Go ahead. Thank you. How much revenue did we collect from short-term rental properties?
Short-term rental properties, we collected around a few $1,000s. I'm adding them up, it's less than 5,000.
Thank you.
Mark?
Yeah, I was just reading the fine print down here at the bottom about the 14.29% for advertising. So that's, you cannot spend less than 14.29%. Is that per year or for, how does that work out?
That is the fund balance requirement.
Councilmember Hill, what this is showing is that we can spend, I'm just going to clarify all of them, no more than 15% for the arts, no more than 50% for historical, and then no less than 14. So we can spend more on advertising than 14%, but no less than 14%. And so that, what this is showing is from inception, from the first time that we started collecting the HOT tax, the hotel occupancy tax, this is showing the allocation of the revenue since then, and then it shows how much we've spent, so what the balance is.
I got you.
Okay.
And I just want to make sure that I'm very clear. Based on these numbers, we added $200,000 to our fund. In other words, we did not spend $200,000 of this allocated fund.
Yes.
Thank you. And that took in all the rebates and all the give-backs that we're doing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
The next special revenue we will be going over is the DUD. This fund for fiscal year 23's total revenues are $1,735,000, and the total expenditures are $2,225,749. $2,184,749. Excuse me. The revenues are consistent with the stormwater revenue which is based off the rate study. And these are standard fees on the residential utility bill. And the sliding scale for commercial properties. Expenditures, salaries are based on an annual adjustment. Supplies have stayed flat. Maintenance has also stayed flat. And services have gone down $318,000 from prior year because of the stormwater analysis, stormwater modeling, and the Arborbrook Channel design. The capital outlay consists of the Arborbrook Channel construction, stormwater repairs, and the stormwater condition assessment packages for this year. And there will be no transfer outs for this year. Do you have any questions on this fund?
Mark?
Yeah, so I see a big delta between last year and this year in terms of the expenditures, and then our net balance or net for the year. Can you explain what occurred there?
Yes, this is due to timing of projects. The revenue received for this year is less than the projects, and so you're seeing the negative net.
In addition, if you recall, they did the business plan for the municipal drainage utility district, and they brought forth to council the business plan with the rate structure for increasing rates over the next 5 years. So they're building up their fund balance to be able to do those projects that were identified during that process.
So we wouldn't anticipate a $450,000 loss next year?
No. We plan to use the fund balance. You're building it up so that you can do the projects.
Okay, thanks.
I do have a question related to Mark's. Do we expect to see the 1.7 revenue continue on with the increase in fees and so forth?
Go ahead. Go ahead. It's going to increase because the way that the master fee schedule shows, your residential is going up $1 per year. And then, as she said, there's a sliding scale for the commercial. So the commercial are going up at kind of a different rate. For example, if they have 10,000 to 49,000 square feet of impervious area, it's going from $15 to $18. And then as the area increases, it's increasing.
I was just looking that last year we looked at about $1 million in revenue, and this year we're looking at 1.7. So just see that being consistent.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Don, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, following up on that revenue, am I remembering correctly, we are actually increasing fees over a time period, over multiple years, is that right? So they will continue to increase over time, isn't that right? So we would expect the revenues will...
Yes, you approved, the increases started in October of 2020, and the master fee schedule takes it out into October of 2026.
Okay. And once again, you mentioned on services the drop. Can you say again what caused the drop in that services? It had to do with this, I think it had to do with that rate study also, is what you said, right?
Correct. It's also the stormwater modeling and the Arbor Brick channel design. Design comes before construction, and so that amount was also included in
I got it. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Cliff?
Kim, are the expenditures, is that cash flow? I mean, that's a cash number, as is revenue.
Correct.
So it's a deficit.
It's a deficit. We'll be spending fund balance, but we plan for that because we were trying to, we increased the revenue to build up the fund balance so then we could start doing those projects that they had identified.
Thanks.
Okay.
Continue on.
All right. The next special revenue that we'll be going over is IMF. IMF will be on page, let me get it. 23. For IMF, for fiscal year 23, the total revenues are $6,736,020. And the expenditures are $3,554,637. Revenues come from a quarter-cent sales tax. Sales tax is different than property tax, as the sales tax dollars come from the individual purchasing goods and services within the city of Coppell, and property tax is from the residents of Coppell. Transfers in come from the facilities, which are transferring $1,545,000. Streets are transferring $1,656,000, and traffic is transferring in $190,000 for a total of $3,391,000. This is due to a schedule, the maintenance schedules of the city, and it changes every year. For expenditures, salaries make up 25% of the construction inspector's salaries. Maintenance is the total of transfers in, which is that $3,391,000 from facilities, streets, and traffic. Services are the administrative service fees from the cost allocation study, and the amount for each fund that uses those services rendered, and that is the amount, $138,574 is the amount that is allocated for the IMF fund. We will not see any capital outlay this year due to construction fatigue, like stated in the town hall meeting. We will complete the reconstruction of Royal, still do the ADA improvements and street, alley, and sidewalk repairs. Do you have any questions?
Don.
The reconstruction of Royal. We haven't started reconstruction of Royal yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Beltline.
Beltline. So sorry. So sorry.
Don, did you have a question?
Yeah, just real quickly, you answered on the CapEx. What was the $2.5 million last year? Do you recall what that was?
Yeah. So the $2.5 million, hold on, let me grab it for you.
Don, I thought you were just going to ask if we just couldn't claim construction fatigue every year.
Just stop construction all the time. Okay, that's fine. No problem. And remind me, Kim, I think you may have told me this before, but the 18 million or 22 million that we have in this fund, do we have it all allocated for future, like do we have an idea of what we're going to spend that money on over time? Because I know we build this up and it's a replacement fund and everything else, so.
So it's part of the 5-year plan.
Okay.
Or forecast, and so Kent's team has developed a schedule on how this money will be spent.
Of how that money, okay, well, that's what I was thinking was the case, but I just wanted to, I couldn't remember for sure. Thanks.
Everybody okay? Right?
Going over is the Rolling Oaks Memorial Cemetery. For fiscal year 23, revenues total are $2,148,417, and the total expenditures are $1,720,681. Revenues come from the sale of burial rights, less the 15% required for the perpetual care fund. Burial rights depend on what we have remaining at the end of the year and the inventory. For expenditures, salaries are based on the annual adjustments. Supplies have come down in this fund from fiscal year 22 because of the furniture that was purchased, because of the flood that happened at the cemetery. Maintenance has gone down slightly because of the re-roof of the columbarium. And services has gone up just from inflation. Do you have any questions? The next fund that we will be going over is CRDC. The total revenue for CRDC is $3,845,120.
28.
The expenditures are $3,619,484. Revenues come from sales tax, which is the largest contributor to the revenues. It is also the half-cent that is authorized by the voters. We do show the debt service portion in this fund for all of the CRDC bonds. And since the Art Center has opened, we are now seeing a better picture of the revenues coming in from fees. Expenditures consist of salaries, which are based off of the annual adjustments. Supplies have been adjusted to fit the need of the facility after the full year of being open. Supplies have lowered from the fiscal year 22 or 21 actuals because of the cost of purchasing the required items needed for the Art Center. Now that it's open, the necessary items will be purchased. Maintenance has gone up due to packages. We have 4 packages set for the core, which include replacing lighting over the indoor pool, pool plaster, side tower replacement, and a pool pump replacement. Services have increased over prior years slightly due to inflation on services. Capital outlay consists of packages and projects associated with the parks and the art center. Those packages consist of seat back program, the ABE erosion wall repairs, replacement lighting prediction system, the playground resurfacing, the bridge deck replacement, furniture replacement, and the weight machine replacements. This year, we will not see a transfer out to the general fund. Do you have any questions?
I do. What do we expect? You got me, I was going to quote Beltline, but Royal. What do we expect the increase in the debt service to be when we get around to doing Royal? What's
The 2 cents that we took off related to North Lake will probably come back on with Royal.
Okay, thank you.
Let me also add, though, that when we're talking next week, we're going to present some options for you to consider, knowing that you have the ability to use some of your unassigned fund balance. You have some ability to transfer some tax-backed debt. So you're going to have options to look at how you want to approach that.
So we're still in a very nice position when it comes to looking at where we're going in the future.
You are in a great position to have lots of options that you're going to be able to choose from,
Okay.
where you want to go.
Thank you. Bijou?
Thank you, Mayor. Question for you is CRDC employee count is 14 and 752,180 is just the salaries, including pension fund on insurance.
That is salary and benefits, including the one employee that Janine came forward with to council. That is also incorporated into that salary and benefits.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Continue on.
The last special revenue that we'll be going over is the CRDC debt. The CRDC debt fund is restricted to paying for the principal and interest on the city's CRDC debt. Revenues come from the half-cent sales tax and are paid first. Revenues match the expenditures. Do you have any questions?
This is going to sound like a really bad question, but this fund is funded directly from the previous page where we have the outlier of the same exact amount.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Questions, anybody? Kim?
To answer your question, council member, on the IMF, the $2,500,000 came from $1.1 million for dividend, $700 for Mockingbird, and $700 for Royal.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir. And that concludes the special revenue funds for tonight.
So before we go to the next one, yes, I was going to see if we had any other questions concerning that. Don?
Yes. In general, there are some funds, I think it's great we have a lot of these funds tucked away for different purposes and everything, but there are a few of them that are dormant, near dormant, don't get used a whole lot. And in particular, like there's $500,000 like in red light, in the red light fund. How do we eventually expend those funds? Because there's, I know that one's sort of a dead one at this point, but there's money sitting there. And then there's some other little ones that just have money, $250,000 here and there. tucked away that I know we use as things come up, but like specifically on the red light, I mean, there's $500,000. How do we get a hold of that?
Sure. So the red light has 500 million or 500,000 that has been identified for the Axon cameras for the police department.
Got it.
We will come forward with our amendment, and that money will be encumbered for that purpose.
Okay.
Until it is completely depleted.
Okay.
So it was an PO that was issued a couple years ago for a contract that was spread over several years. So it rolls over. We haven't brought the budget amendment forward. That's why it's not being reflected. That amount really is used.
Okay.
Yes, you'll see that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, well, that will conclude item number 4. Thank you very much, ladies. Item number 5 is our citizens' appearance. Did we have anybody sign up for the second one? Well, I'm going to forego the reading of all of that. With nothing else to be before the council, item number 6 is adjourned at 8:19 p.m. Thank you very much. Oh, yes.
Got to make it official.
Kevin